Jim. My wife, Connie, whom I had been married to for 4 years, was chatting at the kitchen table with her good friend and college roommate, Nellie Foster. Nellie had remained one of her closest friends since we all graduated from college 5 years ago. Her husband, Jeff, had been killed 2 years earlier in a car accident caused by a drunk driver, and she continued to turn to us for help and support. I was in the garage, tinkering with my old '66 GTO, which I just couldn't bring myself to part with and probably spent more time under the hood than behind the wheel, when their conversation became quite heated. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but Nellie ran out of the garage, yelled at me, "Your wife is a stupid bitch," got in her car, and drove away. I looked up and saw Connie standing in the doorway with an angry look on her face and asked what was going on. She just shrugged and said they had different opinions, turned around, and went back into the apartment. I finished cleaning up my tools and drying everything, then went into the house and found Connie talking on the phone with someone. When she saw me, she turned and went out onto the patio so I couldn't hear. It was strange, but I didn't think much of it at the time. The weekend passed without incident, but Connie seemed a little distracted. On Monday, I had just started my work day when Nellie called and asked if I wanted to have lunch with her. This was very unusual, so I asked what was going on, and she said she needed to talk. I thought it might have something to do with the argument she and Connie had had over the weekend. We agreed on a time and place, and I went back to work. I arrived at the cafe at the appointed time and took a table in the corner where we could talk without disturbing others or being interrupted. Nellie arrived, saw me, and joined me. When the waitress brought us our drinks and took our order, I asked her what was wrong. Nellie sighed and began her story. When Connie and I were in high school, she met Ken Sample. Ken was new. His parents had recently moved from a small town up north. He was handsome, charming, and likable. He quickly became famous in sports, and although he didn't excel in any one sport, he was always on the field and became very popular with the guys. He and Connie were in several classes together and soon became good friends. After a couple of weeks, they started dating and soon became a couple. She confessed to me that they had been intimate, but nothing serious. He constantly pressured her to take their relationship to the next level, but she refused, saying that she was saving herself for her husband and no one else. Graduation came, and we all went our separate ways. Connie and Nellie went to state universities, and Ken went back north to a university near his old neighborhood. She met you in her junior year at State University, and the rest is history. Okay, Nellie, thanks for the history lesson, but I don't understand why we needed this mysterious dinner. Ken is in town, somehow tracked Connie down and got in touch with her. They had dinner together a few times and, from what I understand, became quite close. It seems he hinted to her that now that she's married and no longer a virgin, it's time she finally gave him what she's been denying him all these years. My God, Nellie, she can't be taking him seriously. She's much smarter than that. I can't believe she's thinking of cheating on me. Jim, I thought the same thing until she came to me on Saturday. She wanted me to tell you that we were going away for 2 weeks to a spa. I had to cover for her so you wouldn't suspect anything. I asked her what the hell was going on. She confessed that she and Ken had booked a 2-week spa vacation on the West Coast starting this weekend, and that she was finally going to give herself to him. I tried to tell her she was crazy and that I didn't want anything to do with cheating. She said it wasn't cheating, just old debts, and that if I was her real friend, I should help her cover for her trip. Well, you know how her request ended. I didn't help her. Jim, I'm telling you this because you're one of my best friends, and you supported me after the accident with Jeff. You help me with the little things. You take care of my garden, fix my car, do odd jobs around the house, and most importantly, you give me a shoulder to cry on when I need it. I can't stand by and watch her treat you like this. Nellie, I can't describe how I feel right now. It's just unbelievable. Thank you for telling me about this. I don't know what I'm going to do yet because I haven't had time to process this blatant disregard for our marriage vows and complete disrespect for me and our families. Believe me, she won't be happy if she continues down this path. We finished lunch. I thanked her again, and with a heavy heart, I returned to work. I had 2 weeks to prepare for the impending disaster, and I planned to use that time as best I could. I asked Stella, my secretary, to contact my boss Frank and schedule a meeting for today. Frank agreed to meet with me at 2:30 p.m. I couldn't help myself and told Frank the whole story. He couldn't believe it and asked how he could help. I told him I hadn't made any decisions yet, as I was still in shock, but that I would keep him posted. I went back to my office and asked Stella to come in and close the door. I told her what had happened, and she couldn't believe it either, but promised to help in any way she could. As I mentioned, I met Connie at a women's club party with Nellie and her boyfriend Jeff. We liked each other right away and hit it off like a house on fire. The 4 of us remained close friends. I asked Connie if she wanted us to be a couple and date exclusively, and she agreed, but immediately added that she didn't want to lose her virginity before marriage. That didn't bother me, as I was truly smitten with this girl and deeply in love. She never asked me about my previous relationships, and because of her statement, I never felt the need to ask her about hers either. I earned a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering, and Connie earned a bachelor's degree in education. Nellie, Jeff, Connie, and I decided to have a joint wedding to save money, and my bachelor party and honeymoon were worth all the waiting. We started our life together and focused on our careers. I received an offer from a well-known aerospace company in Orlando and accepted it. Connie and Nellie found jobs with the local school board, Jeff landed a high-paying position at Disney, and we all moved to Greater Orlando. We started to get used to our new surroundings and different career paths. Once we settled in, we decided that any talk of family should be put on hold until we felt more comfortable. We rented apartments close to work, and life was good. Jeff and Nellie didn't live in the same complex, but they were only a few minutes' drive apart. Life was good, the sex was amazing, and I was on cloud 9 until that day came. The drive home was long and exhausting, with so many thoughts running through my head, and I didn't know how to solve this problem. Some might think I should talk to her and forbid her from doing it. But what good would that do? She would be offended by my interference, think that I treated her like my property, and I would be looking over my shoulder wondering what was going on behind my back for the rest of our lives. One thing I knew for sure. She had destroyed my trust in her, and now it was impossible to rebuild. I decided to see how things would unfold. I parked my car on the street, as we only had one driveway for Connie, and the GTO was in the garage, and walked up to the front door wondering what to expect. When I entered, I heard Connie talking on her cell phone and called out that I was home. Connie turned around, waved her hand, and went out onto the patio to continue her conversation so I couldn't hear. I noticed that this was the second time in a week. I went to the refrigerator, grabbed a cold beer, went into the living room, and relaxed in an armchair. 5 minutes later, Connie appeared, all excited, and began to explain that her friends from the women's club had planned a 5-year reunion at a spa on the West Coast and had invited all the sisters. I asked, "When is it?" "Not this weekend, but next weekend, from Friday afternoon to Sunday. I hope you don't mind. I really want to go. It'll be so much fun." "I would never stop you from seeing your friends and having fun. What makes you think that?" "I don't know, but we've never been apart, and I thought you might be a little upset." "Honey, we have our whole lives ahead of us. One weekend won't hurt our love. Besides, I trust you completely. You behave well, but you also know how to have fun. What time are you and Nellie planning to leave on Friday? I'll try to get home early to see you off." I thought she flinched slightly and couldn't look me in the eye. "Nellie isn't going. She had plans and can't change them." "She must be upset. I'm sure she would have liked to see all your old friends as much as you do. What a shame. Well, never mind. What's for dinner?" The game was on. The atmosphere at dinner that evening was tense, nothing specific, but the conversation was strained. After helping with the dishes, I went to the garage to immerse myself in my favorite pastime, working on my GTO. Connie peeked out and asked when I was going to bed. I replied that I would be in soon as I finished adjusting the lifts. A couple of hours later, I quietly slipped into bed, trying not to wake Connie. The next day, I realized that she had decided to betray me and that I needed to protect myself from the possible consequences. I met with my boss, Frank, again and asked for time off and a trip to our head office in Denver. This game of covering your tracks can be played by two people. I wasn't sure I could maintain control for the next 2 weeks, and I wasn't ready to sleep with that bitch again. Frank agreed to come up with a cover story for me and offered to keep Stella in the loop. After taking care of all my work, I made an appointment with a lawyer for the following week and began gathering and preparing the necessary financial documents. In addition, I paid off and canceled our joint credit cards, transferring half of the available balance from our joint bank account to my personal account. Connie and I had separate accounts and separate credit cards for personal expenses. Household expenses were paid from our joint account. That evening at dinner, I explained to Connie that I needed to go to Denver on business and that I was leaving on Monday and would be back no earlier than the end of the week, possibly later. I had important matters to attend to related to my current project. A look of relief flashed across her face, and she began talking about how much she would miss me and how long the week would be for her. The rest of the week and the weekend passed in a tense atmosphere, with us walking around each other, trying to avoid unnecessary conversation and personal encounters. We also avoided any physical contact in bed. Anyone with common sense would have realized that all was not well in the Miller household. On Sunday, I packed my things for the trip to Denver and left for O'Hare Airport the next morning, explaining that I didn't know when I would be back and that I would leave my car in long-term parking. I left knowing that I was ready to end this sham of a marriage. The meeting with the lawyer that day went as expected. No child support was required. The joint ownership of the house was not divided. But since our state does not recognize fault in divorce, and also because of the difference in our salaries, I would probably have to pay alimony. If that was necessary to get rid of this adulteress, so be it. I gave her all the financial documents and asked her to prepare the papers to file for divorce on the grounds of incompatibility. I said I would like to deliver the notice in person next Friday and asked her to have everything ready by then. She replied that there would be no problem. Everything was ready. After a leisurely lunch, I checked into the airport Holiday Inn Express and settled in. I decided to relax by the pool. After the obligatory phone call home, I decided to go to bed. That night, I couldn't sleep. On Tuesday, I met with the real estate agent and told him that I needed a one-bedroom apartment with a garage in a decent neighborhood at a reasonable price. The agent said he would check availability and get back to me. I then rented a storage unit near my current location to store the GRO and all my personal belongings. Everything was falling into place, but now I needed to finalize my plans for an important meeting on Friday. I might need some help. I had dinner and a few drinks at a restaurant near the hotel and enjoyed the evening alone. I returned to the hotel for another sleepless night. On Wednesday morning, I contacted Nellie and asked if she was free for lunch or perhaps dinner. She couldn't leave for lunch, but she would be delighted to have dinner with me. I asked if I could pick her up at 7 o'clock, and she agreed. I was ready for a good steak and made a reservation at Texas Roadhouse, a restaurant near her house. I spent the rest of the day reviewing lists and details that might need attention. Evening came, and I got ready to meet Nellie. I arrived a little early, knocked on her door, and she invited me in while she finished up. She looked amazing, and I told her so. I mentioned that I had made a reservation at Texas Roadhouse, and she was thrilled. We sat down, ordered drinks, and I started telling Nellie about what was going on in my life. She said she hadn't spoken to Connie since they had argued that afternoon. I told her about the class reunion that Nellie, for some strange reason, couldn't make it to, and she smiled slightly. She was surprised by what I had done and asked if I really wanted to go down that path. I tried to explain to her all the anger, pain and suffering I had experienced because of her blatant lies and betrayal, as well as because I couldn't live in that environment. She seemed to understand me and offered her support and a place to stay until I found another place to live. I explained one important point in my plan to her. I needed to know when she was planning to leave so that I could intervene and give her the divorce papers. Nellie said she would talk to the school administration and see what she could do. After thanking her, we continued our evening and enjoyed dinner. I drove her home, walked her to her apartment, and received a chaste kiss on the cheek with gratitude for a wonderful evening. D-Day 1. Nellie called and said she planned to leave for the coast around 4 p.m. on Friday and leave school early to pack and get ready for the weekend. I called Connie and told her I would be back late from my trip to Denver and would be flying in on a night flight. I told her she'd better be ready for a stormy welcome, and she faltered a little, stunned by the statement. I spent the rest of the day finishing up preparations, stopped by the lawyer's office to pick up the divorce papers, and got ready for my late arrival. Around 10:30, I called Connie and told her I had taken off from Denver and would be arriving in Oklahoma City early the next morning. She sadly informed me that she had started her period that morning, so the celebration of my return would have to be postponed. The lies continued. I drove to the East Coast, had a late dinner of seafood, and went to the movies to kill time. Early the next morning, I returned to Orlando, drove home, and entered what would probably be our house for the last time. I crept into the bedroom and got into bed. Connie didn't seem to wake up and continued sleeping while I tried to fall asleep. That day, I woke up in an empty bed, and the smell of coffee filled the house. I went to the kitchen and saw Connie dressed and ready for work. She said hello, poured me a cup of coffee, apologized for not waiting for me, and said she would catch up after the weekend. I said I understood, and that I had to go to work, and might not be back before she left. She understood, kissed me quickly, and left for school. As soon as she left the house and disappeared around the corner, I started getting ready. In less than 2 hours, everything was loaded into the GTO, or my Honda. I drove the GTO to the garage, locked it up, and called an Uber to take me home. Everything was ready for a hasty retreat. I parked the Honda in an empty parking lot near our house and waited for her to return. Connie came home at 12:30, and after waiting a few minutes, I drove up to her car and parked behind her. I quietly entered the house, sat down in the living room, and waited. I could hear her in the hallway gathering things she thought she might need for the weekend, humming a tune. After quickly showering and getting dressed, she entered the living room, dragging a bag with her overnight things behind her. When she saw me, she gasped, but quickly recovered and asked what I was doing at home. "I'm still living here, depending on what happens in the next few minutes." Her face paled, and she asked me to explain what I meant. Then I decided to dispel her illusions. "I know all about your weekend dates with your ex-boyfriend Ken, and I want you to know that if you continue in the same vein, there will be no turning back. The decision is entirely yours." The surprise on her face gradually gave way to anger. She looked at me defiantly and began her tirade. "Damn it, Nellie and her big mouth, it should have been her. If she had kept her mouth shut, you wouldn't have found out. I would have come back to you and everything would have been fine. Nellie is trying to save you from yourself and save our marriage, and you're doing the wrong thing. I would have looked you in the eye and known right away that something was wrong. Now that we've had a heart-to-heart, the ball is in your court, so to speak. Honey, you have to understand, I feel like I owe this to Ken, considering how many times I sent him home with a black eye. He just wants to see what he's been missing all these years. It doesn't mean anything. It's just sex, and it will be over by the end of the weekend. There will be no more. I'll be home on Sunday afternoon, and I'll be your loving and faithful wife for the rest of our lives." "That won't happen, honey. If you walk out that door, it's over. You don't owe Ken anything, but you owe me your loyalty. You remember your vow to give up everyone else. Once you break that, it's over between us. So once again, if you walk out that door, You walk out of my life. Jim, just because I'm your wife doesn't mean I'm your property. You can't treat me like a thing. I made these plans and I intend to carry them out. The reservation is already made and I'm going to use it, whether you like it or not. I stood up, took the envelope from the coffee table, and walked over to her. I demanded that she take off our wedding rings, saying that I didn't want them to be tainted by her, and handed her the envelope. She screamed, "What the hell is this? I'm not taking off my rings." I replied calmly, "Honey, this is a divorce petition that will be officially served to you on Monday morning at the office. And if you don't take off the rings, I'll take them off myself, and you won't like it." Jim, I just feel like I have to do this weekend. It won't affect our life or our love. I will always be your loving wife. We will raise our children and live to a ripe old age. You're wrong again, dear. I'm leaving, and the next time you see me, it will be in divorce court. So have a nice weekend and a happy life. I hope that's all you wanted, because you've destroyed our marriage. Just give me the rings and I'll start a new life. Abracadabra, you're free. Enjoy your life. I don't think she took me seriously, but when she handed me the rings, I was already standing at the door, got into my Honda, and started to drive out of the driveway when she started begging me. Too little, too late. I called Nellie, and she said she was waiting for me and had prepared the guest room. Later that evening, I drove past our condo and noticed that her car wasn't in the driveway, and correctly assumed that she had carried out her plan. The next day, I met with a real estate agent who showed me several apartments until I found one that met all my requirements. It seemed like it was available right away, and I could start moving in that same day. I paid all the necessary deposits, signed the lease, and got the keys to my new apartment. When I returned to Nellie's place, I told her the news and said that I would start moving the next morning and would need help buying new furniture. She seemed a little upset, but agreed to help. By the end of Sunday, I had unpacked my things, bought the basic furniture, and was ready to face my new future, the future of a single man. Nellie insisted that I come over for dinner since I didn't have any kitchen utensils, and I gratefully accepted. Dinner was delicious, probably one of the last home-cooked meals I would have for quite some time. I helped Nellie clean up, we had a glass of wine, and I headed back to my new apartment. Around 8:30, my cell phone rang with a familiar rhythm. "Hello, Connie. How can I help you?" "Where are you?" she began her tirade. I replied, "I'm home." "No, you're not home. I've been home for an hour and you're not here." I replied, "I no longer live at that address, and I can assure you that I am at my new apartment." I think a light bulb went off in her pretty little head, and she began to understand the situation. "Oh my God, Jim, you can't be serious. It was just one weekend and now it's over. I'll never see him again. It was just sex, not even good sex, and it's certainly not worth destroying our marriage over." "Connie, you started destroying our marriage after your first dinner together. You can't blame me for this. I tried. Your friends tried to convince you not to go through with your devious plans. But you continued down this destructive path, and now you have to live with the consequences. Tomorrow at work you will be handed the official documents. I suggest you hire a lawyer to help you review the terms of the documents and contact my lawyer if you have any questions. I hope we can resolve this quietly and quickly, without constant arguments and shouting. I believe I have offered you a fair settlement, and I hope you will accept. I wish you a pleasant life and hope that all your wishes come true. Goodbye." I ended the call and turned off the phone. I finished my evening chores and lay down in my new single bed, trying to fall asleep. Tomorrow would be a new day. Connie. When Jim hung up, the phone went silent. I immediately tried to call him back, but it went to voicemail. He sounded serious when he talked about divorce, and I needed to somehow change his mind and assure him that it didn't mean anything, that it was just a fling. I was still his mistress and soulmate. We just needed to work things out. I walked through the apartment and noticed that all his things were gone, and his car wasn't in the garage. Then I realized that my future with Jim looked very bleak. I thought it wasn't too late to call Nellie. She would surely support me and tell me how to calm Jim down and get him back home. "Hi, Connie, how was your spa vacation? I hope it was worth your marriage and your future, because you ruined both." "Oh my God, Nellie, what have I done?" "You have to help me. He left the apartment and won't talk to me. I didn't think he was serious about divorce and that he would eventually forgive and forget. We would have continued living, started a family, and lived happily, growing old together. Tell me what I can do to save our marriage." "Honestly, Connie, I don't think your marriage can be saved. I don't know what you wanted from him after you left. You just announced that you were going to make him a cuckold for the weekend, and he was supposed to welcome you back with open arms. You were going to give him the rest on Sunday night to show him how much you loved him? I don't believe you know your husband, Connie. No self-respecting man would forgive you for that without revenge. Now you have to pay for your betrayal. You should also know that Jim spent Saturday night here with me. I wanted to tell you myself before you found out from someone else. Of course, he slept in the guest room, being too much of a gentleman to take advantage of the situation, although I wanted him to. I slept better that night than I had in all the time since Jeff died, knowing there was a man in the house. You showed no love, no respect, not the slightest regret for one of the best men I've ever known. You probably shouldn't call here anymore because after what you've done, I no longer consider you my friend. You created this situation, and now only you can fix it. Goodbye, Connie." For the second time that night, the phone went dead in my hand. I just stared at the empty space, thinking about how I had ruined my life over a few days of mediocre sex. I had to figure out how to talk to him, how to make him understand how sorry I was, and what I was willing to do to make it up to him. He wasn't answering his phone. I couldn't get through to him at work. He worked in a secure building that you couldn't even approach without a pass. I didn't know where he lived, and my best source of information advised me to take a walk around the short pier. Maybe persistence would pay off, and if not, I'd have to contact his lawyer. Nellie. Jim arrived on Friday evening, and I helped him unpack his things in the guest bedroom. Then we sat down, me with a glass of wine, Jim with a cold beer. Jim looked very depressed, and I tried to help him cope with his pain. We ordered pizza, ate it, and had a few more glasses of wine and a couple of beers. After cleaning up and saying goodnight, I leaned over and kissed Jim on the cheek, and the dam broke. He hugged me and shook. I knew he was crying about his lost life, and I just held him tight. After 5 or 10 minutes, he started to calm down, and we let go of each other. He looked me in the eyes and said, "Thank you. I needed that. Thank you for being such a wonderful friend." We went to our bedrooms and went to sleep. I slept better that night, knowing there was a man in the house. On Saturday, I woke up and went to the kitchen to make breakfast. Jim walked in just as the coffee was ready and asked if he could help. I said everything was fine and that I hoped he would like scrambled eggs and toast. After breakfast, Jim had a meeting with a real estate agent and left for the day. During the day, I thought a lot, convincing myself that I couldn't find a more suitable life partner than Jim. Until recently, I hadn't even thought about it. But now he was single, and I wanted him to know that I was, so to speak, claiming him. He returned later that afternoon and announced that he had found an apartment in a great location that met all his requirements and that he was moving tomorrow. He asked if I would help him find suitable furniture. Of course, I agreed, but I wanted things to happen more slowly so that he could spend more time with me. On Sunday morning, Jim packed his things and was ready to move into his new apartment. We left right after breakfast. After a day of moving, shopping, and arranging furniture, I told Jim that I would cook us a delicious dinner. He seemed pleased with the idea, and we returned to my place. After dinner, Jim helped me wash the dishes, and after a glass of sherry, he left for his apartment. I couldn't explain it, but I felt a sudden emptiness and regretted that he had left. I finished cleaning the kitchen and was about to go to bed when the phone rang. I looked and saw that it was Connie calling. This was going to be interesting. I let off some steam, told her everything I thought, and said that I didn't approve of her behavior over the weekend. After I said everything I wanted to say, I told her to delete my number, that I no longer considered her a friend, and hung up. I felt a little sorry for her, but she had made her bed, and now she would have to lie in it, and lie in it alone. Time passed. Jim. The divorce dragged on for 8 months. During that time, Nellie invited me out to dinner several times, and I invited her out to dinner, drinks, and dancing several times. We became quite close, but because of my marital status, there was no intimacy between us. The judge approved the final papers, and I was single again. I invited Nellie to a celebratory dinner, and she accepted. It was a wonderful evening with dinner and dancing, and the best was yet to come. We spent the night at her apartment, giving in to our pent-up desires, and it seemed that we were perfect for each other. 2 weeks later, I moved into her apartment, which was larger than my one-room place, as she and Jeff were planning to start a family. After 5 months of living together, I was ready to take the plunge again, and she agreed to marry me. After a small civil ceremony, we became husband and wife and had children. We now have 2 children, a 3-year-old boy and a 1-year-old girl. We are not sure if we want a third, but we have not made a final decision yet. Connie. I tried to contact Jim through his lawyer, but Jim refused to communicate with us, did not respond to letters, did not answer the phone, and did not agree to meet. I begged the judge to schedule counseling for us, but Jim said he did not want to attend any sessions, that it would be a waste of time because he would never agree to reconciliation. The divorce was finalized, and I was left with nothing. During this period, I tried several times to mend my relationship with Nellie, but my requests were again ignored. She ignored me at school and wouldn't even look in my direction. Once during lunch, I sat down at her table to get her attention. She got up and moved to another table, which drew several disapproving glances. Then I realized what I had done, and that it was probably time for me to leave. I left and went back home to my parents. At least they talked to me, no matter how disappointed they were. I heard through the grapevine that Nellie and Jim were dating and had become a couple. Later, I found out about their wedding and started crying over my stupidity. Nellie. Jim's divorce seemed to drag on forever. He often came over for dinner and a glass of wine. One evening, while he was helping me clean up, we bumped into each other and I stumbled. Jim quickly caught me and helped me stay on my feet. I think we both felt a spark between us. He leaned toward me and we kissed. We both knew we wanted each other, but we had the strength to hold back our desire, knowing that if we continued, we would end up in the same category as cheaters. On the day the final papers arrived, we went out to dinner, had a drink, and danced. When we got home, we threw ourselves at each other with unbridled passion, seeking satisfaction. And what satisfaction it was. This continued day after day, night after night. Jim moved out of his apartment and moved in with me. We got married, and now, as our 5th anniversary approaches, we have 2 wonderful children. I wonder if I should send Connie a thank you note. P.S. The GTO is now in my garage, although I don't spend much time on it because I try to keep it in a velvet garage most of the time.